Nick Saban, John Mechie, and Phil Mathis all spoke at SEC Media Days, and there were a lot of interesting tidbits that I think are worth talking about, and we have got to break it all down. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from y'all. Hop down to the comments, and two things today. First and foremost, are you excited that the season is right around the corner? Let me know what you're thinking there. And secondly, name which player you're most excited about watching this season in the 2021 campaign. I can't wait to hear from y'all. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content, and you don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed that content, be sure to like and comment down below. But with all of that being said, let's talk about the SEC Media Days. And first and foremost, Saban said a lot of interesting things. I think one of the first things he talked about that I think resonates not only with the Crimson Tide but across college football is a return to somewhat of a normalcy, in the sense that practices have been able to be held with a more normal regiment than last season. Last season threw everything into chaos, and this season is kind of getting back to that structure that is way more familiar. And this is a positive for everyone across the country, but it has to excite these coaches, especially for the young guys coming in. And especially when Nick Saban goes on to talk about how it's always difficult to win, but when you lose as much as the Crimson Tide lost in the draft, I mean, goodness gracious, you look at all the people who exited to go to the NFL on offense, on defense, the Crimson Tide have a lot of pieces to replace. So this year, getting to return to normalcy is really important, especially for a team like the Crimson Tide, because what it means for the preparation for those positions you lost, especially when you could be in a situation where so many young guys look to contribute. Nick Saban also talked about the wide receiver position, and something that John Mechie talked about as well. Mechie saying that they felt like there was a ton to be excited about in the wide receiver room, and this is something that I've talked about on this channel here at length. I understand that the wide receiver room has some inexperience. We're looking to find out exactly how this will all look, but in theory and on paper, I can jot down a few different combinations that are super exciting and very deadly to opposing defenses. The Crimson Tide have a lot of stylistic differences in that wide receiver room that they can use to really hurt a defensive schematic and what the defensive coordinator is able to do to them. And one of the things Saban talked about is when they brought in Jameson Williams from Ohio State. Saban and Mechie have poured in their experience at the SEC Media Days about how much Jameson Williams has impressed everybody during his short stint with the Crimson Tide, and especially just in this summer. So he is a name we're going to have to watch as fall camps roll around. He's someone who we're going to have to keep an eye on, because Saban said he has been really impressive. He wanted to bring in somebody with speed and experience because that speed and experience could help maximize some of the other traits his other wide receivers hold. And even outside of Jameson Williams, there are new guys to be very excited about. Javon Baker looks to get his opportunity this year. Trayshawn Holden is somebody who was really impressive in the spring game, and leading up to the spring game, I was talking about I didn't feel like he was getting the attention that he deserved. Super talented wide receiver, but then we can talk about the freshman. Ajayi Hall was sensational in A-Day and left a lot of us very excited for just how talented he is and what he's going to be able to do once he gets his opportunity. Ja'Cory Brooks, super talented. JoJo Earl, Christian Leary, both guys who could be slot demons. The Crimson Tide receiver position, though inexperienced, looks to be in a really, really good place right now with the talent in the room, and especially when you have John Mechie, who is experienced. You have Jameson Williams coming in, who has experience. Those two guys right there and their veteran presence should be massive for the Crimson Tide's wide receiver room, and I always talk about when I'm talking about Mechie that he was just shy of 1,000 yards last year, and he was very productive in a season where Devontae Smith was unbelievable. Jalen Waddle started the season as good as anybody could have possibly done, and Najee was sensational. So to have that much offense split around that many people is really special. One of the things Saban talked about as well, speaking of the offense, is that they're going to run their offense and that not much is going to change. And that's something that we've been talking about here on this channel for quite some time, that Alabama has kind of established its offense, and the offensive coordinators that have come through have added little wrinkles to it. One of the things I think is super intriguing, Staying on the offense that Saban updated was Javion Cohen. He said he has came along really nicely and progressed really well. And this is a name we need to watch because this is someone who could be a potential starter at this left guard position. And the Crimson Tide are in a situation where even though they have to replace some guys on the offensive line, they are very lucky to have someone like Chris Owens still be there. Chris Owens got some really valuable experience at the end of the season that the Tide looks to continue on into this season. So you're happy that Owens remains with that experience. And then you look, Evan Neal looks to be the next great Alabama offensive lineman, but hearing that Cohen is already stepping up and impressing the staff should ease some Bama fans' stress about where the offensive line room is. The thing I want to end on is the Crimson Tide defense, because the defense this year has all the hype that the offense had last year. The Tide only lose 3 starters on defense in Barmore, Patrick Surtain, and Dylan Moses, and replacing any of them are going to be very difficult. But luckily for the Crimson Tide, both the talent that they got in the recruiting class and the talent they have on roster, and even the talent they got in the transfer portal, look to help ease those losses. And let's start with the transfer portal. Nick Saban identifying that they thought Henry To'oTo'o was one of the most skilled players in their conference, and that's why they were so adamant about trying to get him a member of the Crimson Tide. Now, he will either be paired with Christian Harris, or Christian Harris will be paired with Jalen Moody, but no matter how you shake it, the inside linebacker position at the Crimson Tide is in good hands. Even before the transfer, Jalen Moody, I think, has impressed a lot of Alabama fans anytime he's gotten an opportunity, and he's someone who I think everybody's very excited to see. So the Crimson Tide inside linebacker position, very solid. The defensive line, losing Barmore always hurts to lose somebody of that caliber, but the Tide have a lot of names to come in here and make a name for themselves. And at the defensive back position, this is one that we're going to have to keep watching. Jalen Armour-Davis looks to be the guy to take in this spot opposite of Josh Jobe. He's someone who the Tide staff have been very complimentary of, not only this season, but seasons prior, and he's had an unfortunate time with injuries, but that's something that as long as he can stay healthy, we've heard from the staff time and time again that he is an uber talented individual. But even if we look at the guys behind him, he's got Kool-Aid McKinstry, Terrion Arnold, Kyrie Jackson just coming in. The Crimson Tide secondary, though trying to replace Pat Surtain, has got some incredibly talented dudes in that secondary, which should help ease the transition. I cannot wait for the season to start for the Alabama Crimson Tide. It is slowly getting here, but with SEC Media Days here, it helps make it feel like it's all the closer. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you thought about what it is Saban said, because he gave some very interesting details and tidbits about the upcoming season. That's it. See ya.